America is great because America is good. Dan Webster is good, and he will look at Alan Grayson and say, Grayson, submit to the will of the people. You're fired, Dan Webster.
Anybody want to replace Alan Grayson? Hey, it's great to be here today, and thank you, West Orlando Tea Party, for putting this on and for the great opportunity to see a grassroots movement that just regular people. That's what I used to call myself. I told people when I got elected to Florida House of Representatives, I was just a regular person that lived in Pine Hills. And I would say, I'm Danny from Pine Hills. And yet, many of you have just stepped up, and we need it. Our country needs you, and I need you, and I need your help. I thought about how I've been saying all along that we're borrowing too much money. We're borrowing $4 billion a day, and somehow, some way, we've got to turn off the spigot. And all I want to tell you about is two little things that happened here in the last several months in Congress. First of all, on June 30th of this year, the Congress, who had no hearings on a budget, didn't produce a budget. They passed a budget. But you know what they said? We're deeming a budget passed. You know what that is? It's a blank sheet of paper. It's nothing. It's a fake budget. It does not, under any circumstances, exist. So no one even had a chance, no member, Republican or Democrat, had a chance to turn the spigot off, to slow it down. So someone said, we've got to cut the budget. How? It doesn't exist. There is no budget. And then, this week, just yesterday, the sad thing is this. They passed the appropriation to go with a budget that doesn't exist. And you know what they called it? A continuing resolution. Now let's break those words down. First of all, resolve. They resolved to continue what they've been doing for the last 2 years. They made a resolution. They made a commitment to the American people to say, not only did we like what we did in 2009, and not only did we like what we did in 2010, we are resolving today to continue everything that we did in those 2 years because we think we did right. We did right by borrowing $4 billion a day, and we're going to continue it because it's the right thing for America. Do you believe it's the right thing for America? No! Neither do I. We've got to turn off the spigot. The first thing we need is to actually take up a budget and talk about it, and talk about how we can cut spending. And once we do that, then we need to appropriate the amount of money that's within that budget, those guidelines that are there. There's lots of things wrong with Washington. It's broken, and it needs to be fixed. I'll tell you one other story. When I became Speaker of the House, I had lived through not the whole 122 years of Democrat reign, but some. And I had been used to a process that just said, hey, we're going to push against deadlines. So we'll get people to do, members of the legislature, to do what they don't want to do. And that's the way it works. So don't take up anything that's very important first of session. Wait all the way till the end. And then at the end of every single session under the Democrat control, they would push and push harder, and they would hold every important issue till right at the end. I want you to think about that in context to Congress. You know what that's called? That's called a power-based system because they don't want anybody to know what they're doing. A few people at the top of the pyramid of power know everything. The speaker, the appropriations chair, maybe a majority leader, somebody like that, and that's it. Rank and file Republicans and Democrats have no clue. So they would push against it. So last day of session would come every year. They would feed us junk food all day long. And we would work 18 hours a day and all the way till midnight. And at midnight, after midnight, on the last day of session, that's when it all came out. I'll give you an example. The year before I became speaker, after midnight, last day of session, passed the budget. There was no cool-off period then. We passed a rewrite of the welfare laws, dismantled the Department of Commerce, and started the Department of Health, all after midnight in about 40 minutes. You think anybody knew what was in those bills? Think anybody knew what was in the health care bill? It's the same thing. They just push against a deadline. It's Christmas or some other deadline or the end of session, and they push and they push. That's what power does. That's why they say power corrupts. Ultimate power corrupts ultimately. Everything. And so all of this power is pushed on the last day of session. And I just said, we got to do away with that. We got to get rid of it. Because what we would do, we would go home, and 6 weeks later or 6 months later, we'd find out what we passed. Sound familiar? One year we passed scholarships for prisoners. Fees, taxes, all kinds of things were included in there. And you know why? Because it was a power-based system and just a few people wanted to interject all of what was there. And so when I became speaker, I said, we're not going to do that. Push down the pyramid of power, spread out the base. We're going to adjourn on time. We're not going to do anything after 6 o'clock at night so everybody in the public can see. It's all open. It's all there. And these reforms worked. And we were going to base everything that we took up on principles. Not on power, but principles. That's what Washington needs because the process itself is broken. And if we don't repair that process, it won't matter what we produce. It will be flawed. But if we do, we can have a principle-based government that actually produces good. And that's what I want to do because America's not broken. Washington is.